Alright, so I'm going to go through the answers to the 2021 Recursion and Financial Maths SAC. So we'll start with the multiple choice questions, and question 1 is asking us what the sixth term is, so in this case T6, in the sequence 43, 37, 31, 25, and then obviously this sequence continues is. Now, one thing we need to notice with this particular question is that it says the sixth term is T6, which means our initial starting number is actually T1. So, taking a look at T1, T2, T3, T4, I can see here that my sequence is decreasing each time. So, I'm going to work out what the common difference is for this particular sequence, and then I'm going to work out what T6 is. So I can see here that it's decreasing by 6 units each time, which means that 25 minus 6 is going to be 19, and then minus 6 again, that's going to be 13. So T6 for me is going to be 13, which is D. Alright, so the next question gives us a sequence and then asks us to find the value of the common difference. So with this particular question here, I need to work out what the difference is between each of the values in the sequence that I've been given. So I can see here that from 5 to 14, it's going up by units of 9. And again, I can see that that keeps happening from one term to the next. So the value of my common difference is positive 9. Alright, so the next question says, or asks us to find the common ratio of this particular sequence. So remember, with the common ratio, we take the second term and we divide that by the first term. So I'm going to say that's T1 and T0. So that will mean that I do T1 divided by T0, and that will be 54 divided by 81, and that will simplify to 2/3, which will be B. Okay, so the next question says, so for question 4, using the recurrence relation, where T1 equals 7, and then the relation, the fifth term would be. Alright, so I'm just going to do this using the CAS calculator, or you can do it by hand as well. So if we start with T1, which was 7, then T2 would be found just doing T1 plus 6, which is 7 plus 6, which will be 13. So then to find T3, I would use my answer from above, plus 6, and that will be 19. T4, which I'm going to use 19 plus the 6, will be 25, and then T5 will be 25 plus 6, which is 31. So my answer is going to be E for question 4. So the next question says the recurrence relation for the sequence 5, 20, 80 is. Now, the challenging thing with this particular question is we don't know whether it's arithmetic or if it's geometric. So remember that if it's arithmetic, it's increasing or decreasing by the same amount. And then if it's geometric, it's either being multiplied or divided by a particular ratio. So what we need to work out is it arithmetic or is it geometric? Or geometric. So looking at my numbers, so the difference between 5 and 20 is 15, but then the difference between 20 and 80 is 60. So it's definitely not going up or going down by the same amount. You can obviously see the numbers are increasing. So let's work out the common ratio. So the common ratio, I'm going to take 20 and then I'm going to divide that by 5, and my ratio will be 4. So that tells me that if I take my first term and I multiply that by 4, I should get 20, which I do. And then from 20, if I multiply that by 4, I get 80. So it's definitely a geometric sequence. So taking a look at my my particular options that I've got at the moment, we can go in and we can cancel a few out. So first up, we know that all of them have T1 in it, so that means T1 must be 5. So my initial starting number is 5. Being that, I can cancel out C and I can cancel out E. I worked out my common ratio is 4, so out of my remaining options, B happens to be the only one that has that common ratio that I'm after, which was 4. So my answer for question 5 will be B. Alright, question 6 says a 9% decrease is made by using a common ratio of. So with this particular question, it's a decrease, so we can do 1 minus 9 divided by 100, and if you just use your calculator, that's going to give us 0.91. So my answer will be E. So question 7 says the first 3 terms in the sequence using the recurrence relation T1 equals 5, and then the relation R. Alright, so once again we can see that this particular relation starts at T1, not T0. That's fine, but that also tells us that our first value of our number sequence should be 5. So if I look at my options here, I'm going to eliminate A, B, and E because none of them start with a 5. Remember, this tells us our sequence must start at 5. Oops, don't know what I was going to write there. Alright, so now taking a look at my recurrence relation, I can see that it says 3 times Tn minus 4. So if I started, or if my T1 is 5, so let's find T2. Because once we find T2, we can work out which of C or D is our answer. So I'm going to do 3 times T1, which was 5, minus 4. So you can use your calculator for this one, and we will get an answer of 11, which means that of my 2 options, my second value in my sequence should be 11, which means that D is my answer. Alright, question 8. The number of feral cats in a wildlife reserve increases by 15% each year. So I'm going to highlight that. If there were originally 200 feral cats in the reserve, and I'm just going to quickly highlight that, the reoccurrence relation for the number of feral cats, Cn after n years is. Okay, so there's a few things happening here. The first thing I'm going to note is that an increase of 15% will be like saying 1 plus 15 on 100, which is going to be 1.15. That's going to be pretty useful to us. We know that there was originally 200 feral cats, so C0 is going to be 200. So with these 2 bits of information, let's just have a look at our options and see if we can eliminate anything. So off the bat, I would say we can cancel A, B, and C because we were told that there were originally 200 feral cats, so we're starting at C0. So that just leaves us with D and E. Then it says the recurrence relation for the number of feral cats, Cn, after n years. So in that case, looking at my options, E is going to be the correct answer. So for this question, using the CAS calculator would be really beneficial here, but first and foremost, I'm actually going to use the compound interest equation. So remember that the equation is A equals P times 1 plus R over 100 to the power of T. So in this case here, we don't actually need to work out any of this here. We've been given that. So that is what our interest rate per annum is. Our principal amount happens to be $3,000, and we know that we want our total amount to be $6,000. Given that in the question it asks us when it will exceed $6,000, and what we're trying to solve for is T. So what I would actually do in this instance here is I would use the solve function and I would type into the calculator, solve 6,000 equals 3,000 times 1.11 to the power of t, and then you're obviously solving with respect to t. Now, when you do that, you get an answer of t equals 6.64. So that means it's going to take you about 6.64 years to exceed, or at least to get to $6,000. Now, firstly, we're looking for it to exceed 6,000, and we're looking for how many years. So looking at my answers, we can see that they're all whole numbers. If I round this down to t equals 6, then I will not have hit $6,000, right? Because at 6 years, we will not have reached 6,000. However, the closest answer here would be A, which is 7 years. And that's purely because we know that at 6.64 years, you will have a value of $6,000. We're looking for it to be over that, and if we round it, we have to round it up. So in this case, it will take about 7 years to exceed $6,000. Alright, so question 10, we're talking about the price of a daily train ticket, and it's increased from $10 to $12.50, and then the percentage increase which has been applied is closest to. So for this particular example here, we're obviously looking at a percentage increase. So I'm going to do $12.50 minus the $10, and then divide that by the original price of $10, and then multiply that by 100. And if you use your calculator, you're going to get an answer of 25%. So that tells us that there has been a 25% increase in the price of a daily train ticket. Alright, so question 11 is talking about simple interest. So straight away I'm thinking I equals PRT over 100. Alright, and we're told the initial investment of $15,000 is invested at 4.6% per annum for 5 years. So this is a nice straightforward question. Just identifying what I have. That's my P, that's my R, and that's T. So if you just put this into your calculator, like so, 4.6 times 5 over 100, and that will give us an answer of 3,450. You can also write it in the following way into your CAS. So you can do $15,000 times 4.6 divided by 100 and then times 5. Just know that those two are exactly the same, so it really doesn't matter how you enter it in. If you did option 1 or option 2, you will get the same answer at 3,450. Alright, so question 12. A tree lopper charges $75 per hour plus GST. Now, you should be thinking straight away, if it's plus GST, that means that $75 does not include GST. So it takes him 3 hours to complete a job, and the amount he will charge including GST is, so there's a few ways you can approach answering this question. Personally, the most direct method that I can think of would be to do $75 times the 3 for the hours that he's worked, and then multiply that by 1.1, remembering that we want the total price including GST for this particular answer. And that is going to give us $247.50. Alright, question 13. A company reports an annual profit of 11 cents per share. The market value of the shares is $1.46. We're asked to find the price to earnings ratio for these particular shares. So, using the correct equation, we're going to do current share price divided by the profit per share. So that will be $1.46 divided by 0.11. Remember that we need to convert this into dollars. So that would be 0.11. And that will give us an answer of $13.27, which is approximately D. Alright, question 14. So $25,000 is invested at 3.2% per annum, compound interest. So straight away here, compound interest, definitely a bit more of a complex equation. Nonetheless, A equals P times 1 plus R divided by 100 to the power of T. Alright, so the money is invested for 5 years. The amount of interest earned is closest to. Alright, so there's two parts to this question that we need to actually work on. So let's start by focusing on the equation that I've just written out. We know that our principal is 25,000 and we have an interest rate of 3.2% per annum. Alright, so $25,000 times 1 plus 3.2 divided by 100, and then it's been invested for 5 years. So that's going to give us a total value for the investment of, alright, so that's going to give us a total value of investment of 29,264 and 30 cents. Alright, so now we need to do the second part, which is to actually just work out the amount of interest. So remember, A is telling us it's interest and the principal combined. So we need to then do interest equals A minus P. So that would be $29,264.30 minus $25,000. And that will give us an answer of, $4,264.32. So obviously I have rounded my answer here. So that is approximately C. Alright, and question 15. So in 2015, the cost of a textbook was $74.95. Due to inflation for the next 3 years, the cost of the textbook is expected to increase by 2.5% per year. So in 2018, the cost of the textbook will be closest to. So first up, we've got a time difference here of 3 years, and that's important to note. With an inflation question, we're looking at using the same equation as the compound interest formula. So in this case here, my principal is $74.95. My interest rate is that, and then T is obviously 3 in this case. So that's 2018 minus 2015. So putting this all together into an equation, we've got $74.95 brackets 1 plus 2.5 divided by 100 to the power of 3, and that will give us an answer of $80.713 according to my CAS, which is approximately $80.70. So our answer for question 15 will be D. Alright, so extended response. This section was probably the most challenging in the SAC. Understandably so, there was a lot to do, and obviously it's a little bit more challenging when it is online to be able to take everything in, but I think it's worth going through in any case. So the first question is all about a bank statement and calculating some interest. So let's start by reading the question. So question 1 says the bank statement opposite, or below in this case, shows transactions over a 1 month period for a savings account that earns simple interest rate of 3% per annum, calculated on the minimum monthly balance. Alright, so the first question says, what is the monthly interest rate? Now, with this question here, it does tell us that it's 3% per annum. Given that we're looking for monthly interest rate, with this one, it was just a straightforward 3 divided by 12, which will give us a monthly interest rate of 0.25%. The next question says how much interest is earned in this month. Remember that it's calculated on the minimum monthly balance. So that means that the interest earned for this particular account is based on the lowest the balance will be, which if we take a look at the balances, the minimum balance happens to be $445.82. So min monthly balance. So in this case, $445.82. We know that it is, it earns a simple interest, or simple interest in this case. So I'm actually going to use the simple interest equation here, and with the interest rate, we can actually do one of two things. So we can either use our answer from part A, or we can use the simple interest equation with the original information, and that's probably the safer one, just so that we don't have to confuse any information. So just to backtrack, so PRT over 100 is our interest amount. All right, so our principal is $445.82. Our rate is 3. And now our time period. This is for 1 month only. So for 1 month, we need to actually do 1 divided by 12, right? Because remember, T is always in terms of years. So I'm going to do 1 divided by 12. If you're putting this into your CAS, please be careful. It's very easy to not include the brackets and then ultimately stuff up your answer. Then I'm going to divide all of this by 100. So then that's going to give us an answer of $1.11. The alternative thing you could have done if you wanted to use your answer from part A would be to do 445.82 times 0.25 times 1, because we've already converted that interest rate into the monthly interest rate, and then divide that by 100. And that would have also given us an answer of $1.11. So it's up to you how you chose to work out this particular question. Alright, so now we have a situation where Daniel is buying a mountain bike over a time payment plan. So we've got a situation here where there's obviously some sort of a split payment. So I'm just going to start by highlighting some information, in that it specifies a $150 deposit on the $1,100 bike and monthly installments of $48 over 2 years. So the first question asks us, how much does a mountain bike cost Daniel in total? Well, Daniel in this case has to put a $150 deposit down when he purchases the bike, plus he pays monthly installments of $48 over 2 years, so that's 24 months. So $150 plus 48 times 24, and that would give us an answer of $1,302 and, oh yeah, that's it. Now this question was answered pretty well, or at least 3A was, so no one had real issues there. Then the second question says, how much interest is Daniel to pay? Give your answer to the nearest cent. Now, note in the information above, it told us the bike was actually originally $1,100, and we know from our answer in part A, he actually ended up paying $1,302. So in terms of interest, it would just be $1,302 minus $1,100. And that would mean that Daniel paid total interest of $202. Again, this question was answered pretty well. Alright, so question C, what is the flat rate of interest per annum? So this question was a little bit more challenging. It does require you to use the time payment agreements formula. I would encourage you to, or one of the formulas, I would encourage that you do refer back to the formula sheet where possible, because the equation that we needed to use was actually there. So what we needed to do here was do RF equals 202, which was the amount of interest, times by 100, divided by 1100 minus 150, and that's because the bike cost $1,100, but he put a deposit of $150, which actually means that the amount borrowed was 1,100 minus 150. That's why I've put that in brackets, and then we need to multiply that by 2 for the time. So if you're wondering what the equation is, it is I was about to write the simple interest equation, 100 times the interest divided by the principal, which happens to be the amount borrowed, times time. So remember that that's in years. And P is the amount borrowed. Alright, so putting that into your CAS calculator, you will get an answer that is approximately 10.6% per annum. The last question for this particular question says, what is the effective rate of interest per annum? So, the effective rate of interest, again, if I'm referencing our formula sheet, then RE is equal to RF times 2n divided by n plus 1. So n is the number of payments. So in this case, we need to work out how many payments were made, 24, and then that'll be 24 plus 1. I don't know why I wrote RF there. That should be times the answer from above, which I'm going to write what the calculator actually gave me. So it was about 10.63157, and that's purely to make sure that my effective interest rate is as accurate as possible. And that will give me an answer of 20.41% per annum. So that's my effective rate of interest. Remember, coming back to this equation, n here is our number of payments. Okay, so the last question here is about Alan and his plans to invest $9,500 into a term deposit. He has 2 investment plans from which to choose from. So he's got plan 1, which is all about simple interest, and then plan 2, which is some compound interest. Now, with plan 2, it says it's calculated on the increasing balance and added to the account every month. So part A says to calculate the total interest earned by Alan if he invests the money using plan 1 for 1 year. This question was answered pretty well, which tells me you guys are pretty comfortable using the simple interest equation. So I here is equal to PRT divided by 100. So just coming back to this, that's P. And we're told that it's for 1 year, so that's T. And then R is 3. So $9,500 times 3% times 1 over 100. And that will give us an answer of $285. So Alan will make $285 in interest, or earn, if he invests using plan number 1. So then the second question says, calculate to the nearest cent the total interest earned by Alan if he invested his money using plan 2 for 1 year. Alright, so remember that plan 2 was all about compound interest. So that is A equals P times 1 plus R over 100 to the power of T. And don't forget that we also need to do this. If we start by using equation 1, so we know that there's $9,500 times 1 plus 3 divided by 12 over 100 to the power of 12. Now, the reason that I've done this is if we go back to the actual question itself, or the information, sorry, it says at plan 2, it's calculated on the increasing balance and added to the account each month. So this means that Alan is actually earning some interest every month into his account. So every month we need to work out basically how much interest he actually earns. So the reason that I've divided the interest rate by 12 is that will give me how much, or what the interest rate is per month for Alan's account. Remember that he's earning that on the 9,500, and all I've done here is I've converted the time into the 12 periods, or the 12 months that he will be receiving money for. So doing this will give me an answer of $9,788.95. Now that is what A is equal to, right? So A includes the principal amount that he invested, which is the $9,500, but it also includes the interest payment, the interest that he has earned on this term deposit. So what we need to do here is now work out just the interest, which we would do $9,788.95, and we'll subtract the $9,500. And that'll give us total interest of $288.95. Alright, the second question says, calculate the simple interest rate that would provide the same total interest as earned under Plan 2 for investment of $9,500 for 1 year. Give your answer correct to 2 decimal places. Alright, this question was not answered that well. Now, what needed to happen here is that we needed to revert back to using the simple interest rate equation, which remember is I equals PRT over 100. The question said that it would provide the same total interest as earned under Plan 2. So you needed to use the answer from the previous question to answer this particular question. Even if you got that answer wrong, I would say still use that answer to answer part C. Right, you can still earn some consequential marks. So in this case, we actually know that I is going to be $288.95. What we're looking for is to find the simple interest rate. So we're actually looking for R. That's what we don't know. So again, using the equation, I've got 9,500 times R times 1 for T over 100 equals 288.95. At this point here, I would just use the solve function on your CAS and solve for the rate, or R, and that will give us an answer of 3.04%. So this question says to determine the number of years it would take for the investment to double if it is invested under Plan 1. Okay, so with this particular question, for the investment to double, that would mean that the amount of interest earned was $9,500, right? Because remember, the principal is $9,500. If the investment is to double, that means that Alan has earned $9,500 in just interest. So using the simple interest rate equation, so we've got $9,500, which is our principal, times the interest rate of 3 times T, because that's what we're solving for. Divide that all by 100, and we need to let that equal $9,500 because that is how much interest Alan has technically earned. Solving for T, that will give us T equals 33.3 years. So that means that it will take about 33.3 years for the investment to double if it is invested under Plan 1.